Welcome to Roots of Faith Ancestry. I'm Renee Richard, and I have with me Judy Riffle and Leonard Smith III. And today's episode is on places to get your records, or repositories, archives, courthouses, whatever it takes to find those records for our families. In the past few weeks, we're winding down now. We've given you the basics to doing your genealogy. And so now we want to talk about where to go to find the records. And this is give you some important information on not being intimidated, as I was when I started out. Libraries and courthouses do not require appointments, and they're there for your benefit with plenty of information. And we're going to talk, Judy and I in a little bit are going to talk about all those places in Baton Rouge that we visit, and then we're going to actually branch out to the whole state, because as you work backwards, you may be visiting all kind of places. Archives are a little bit different. Archives, you're going to need to probably sign in and register. You may have to lock up your bags, lock up your belongings, and take just the very basics with you in them. And in some cases, you even fill out a lot of personal information. They give you a card that you can reuse as you go in. The thing to remember is everyone is different in what they require for you to do. And so, be open-minded to it. The other thing is prepare well. Leonard talked about that in the courthouse one. So it's just be prepared for when you go. So since I am a volunteer and former archivist for the Diocese of Baton Rouge, I'll tell you a little bit about their archives. Here, we do require that you make an appointment, but for the purpose of the red books that we discussed, there's no need to go to the archives to research in those. Space is limited. They limit patrons primarily for things that are not published. So that would be the slave research and for records outside of that 1905 on baptisms or for early marriages and burials after 1900. If it's been published in the red books, you can go to the state archives to look at them. You can go to the new genealogy library at Goodwood, or other branches of the East Baton Rouge Parish system have it. In your outlying parishes, every parish, I think, has a copy of our red books. Tangipahoa, Livingston, all of them. Goodwood Library we visited, but I want to reiterate at that library that the periodicals are of great importance when you go there, and books on all the states. You can research your relatives as they leave, as you go back. They're not leaving, they're actually coming here, but as we leave the state, tracing backwards, they may have come from North Carolina or Tennessee. Books on the different counties there for continuing research are great at the Goodwood Library here in town. Another place that is often forgotten and probably one of the best resources would be the Church of Latter-day Saints, or the Mormons as we know it, their Family History Center here in Baton Rouge and in Denham Springs. The one in Baton Rouge is located at the corner, just past the corner of Bluebonnet and Highland. It's actually just north of Bluebonnet. You see the big, beautiful temple. But there you really need to make an appointment to go in. And if you're familiar with the website that we've been talking about, familysearch.org, you can actually go and things that you find on their website, you can order the microfilm, and there's a nominal fee. I think now it's $7. When I used to go, it was like $3.50. That goes to show how long ago. It's now, I think, $7, and they ship it, they send it to that, to their center, whichever one you designate. So it could be Denham Springs, it could be Baton Rouge. And they keep it there for at least 3 weeks, and you can go and come and look at it as you need to. So you could find records from, goodness knows, from other countries if you're doing Irish ancestry. It's amazing what you can find and have it sent to that center. Again, I know the days are very limited in Denham Springs. I think it's only like 1 or 2 days. I'm not sure about the one in Baton Rouge. Again, it's not every day. The good thing about the libraries is that they're open 7 days a week, so they're great for when you have some weekend time to go research. So those are the ones here in Baton Rouge that I'm familiar with, and Judy and I have compared notes, and you've got some others, huh?
Well, we're lucky here in Baton Rouge to have quite a few libraries and archives that we can do research in. The State Library is in downtown Baton Rouge. They're open Monday through Thursday. They have a very large collection of Louisiana books and Louisiana materials. And in some cases, you can check out a copy of a book through your local parish library if the state library has an extra copy of it. So there may be a circulating copy of a book. Also, they have microfilm of some of the parish courthouse records that the Mormons filmed many decades ago. You can access those at the state library. One of my favorite places to do research is LSU's Hill Memorial Library. I've spent many an hour there. One of the things that they have is the largest collection of Louisiana newspapers on microfilm and in some cases original copies. They're also in the process of digitizing some of those newspapers and contributing them to the Library of Congress's Chronicling America website. Also, they have some on their own Louisiana Digital Library that you can access. They also hold plantation collections, manuscripts from Louisiana plantations, and also the records of the French and Spanish governments, the Spanish government records that we call the Cuban papers, which are maybe 1,000 reels of microfilm that I've spent many an hour going through. So there is quite a lot at LSU. Hill Memorial Library, it's on the campus at LSU. Also, there's the Louisiana State Archives in Baton Rouge on Essen Lane. This is a really great place for beginners to get started because they have all the vital records that we've talked about. They also have many governmental type records that you don't normally think of for genealogy, but they're very helpful. Things like hospital records or penitentiary records, records of elected officials, things to do with government. So you'll find a lot of records there on individuals. Currently, they do have a database or a card catalog, digital card catalog, but it's not available online right now. You can access it at the state archives on their terminal, but it's not available. You can't get it through your home. But if you go there, you can search that to see what their holdings are. But that was one of the reasons that I wrote a book on a guide to genealogical research at the Louisiana State Archives, because it was so hard to know what they had there. So I went through their holdings and picked out the things that I thought were most important for genealogy research, and I put them in a book and sort of summarized it in chapters and described some of the collections that I use a lot and that I thought would be helpful to other people in researching their family history. So this was done back in 2008. It's in its second edition right now, and it's practically, if you're coming from out of town and you're going to do research at the state archives, it would be helpful to you to know what's there ahead of time, so you could pick out collections that you might want to look at when you come and not waste a whole lot of time.
Right. Our state archives is one of the few, even within the state, with universities, with other archives around the nation, that does not have a lot of their holdings online. We recommend that you do your homework, go online, see what you need before you go to any of these places. In the case of our state archives, it's not possible to do that. So Judy's book is a gold mine, and there were things I had no idea the state archives had till I bought the book. But if you don't own it, if you're watching our show and you're in one of the outlying parishes even, the libraries have copies, and if they don't, make the librarian please get you a copy, because it helps you to prepare before you get there for what you're looking for. And for those of you that may be researching outside of Baton Rouge, like North Louisiana, there are some courthouse, because courthouse records, unless you make a trip there, it's hard to find where they might be. But sometimes they have them on film, and Judy's book is excellent for anybody that's going to be researching at our state archives, and it's a gold mine of information there. One I didn't mention is East Baton Rouge Parish Courthouse. They actually have an archives, and it's located, it's next to the Centralplex, or the River Center, down where government meets the River Road. And you can look these up online, but it's an excellent place also to go and
if you're researching specifically East Baton Rouge
right,
Parish,
right now we're talking about
area,
East Baton Rouge, things that are here for people. So that would be a courthouse that's specific for East Baton Rouge. So these are just some of our favorite places, not for you to overlook. And with the library system, it doesn't have to necessarily just be Goodwood. That has the largest amount, but some of the outlying branches, Central and those places, will have stuff for East Baton Rouge. And so like the diocese records, specific stuff. But you'd have to go to Goodwood to get outside of that area. So anyway, can you think of anything else in Baton Rouge off the top of your head? I mean, we've covered
Those are the
most of
biggies
them.
that I spend a lot of time
I know, me
at.
too. So when we come back from break, we're going to take a look. Leonard will bring us into the New Orleans since he lived there and he's used to researching down there. We'll take a look at New Orleans. And after we do New Orleans, we're going to branch out to the whole state because as you go back, your people came here from somewhere. So we'll take a break and we'll see you after the break.
Do you need a little light in your life? Tune in to the next episode of Beacons of Light, where we'll share the story of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul in action, serving God's poor and homeless. We'll share stories of our volunteers and our supporters, making the gospel come to life for those in need.
God's way is my way, God's shield is around.
Welcome back. Judy and I have been discussing some of our favorite places to research in the Baton Rouge area, and now we're going to look at the New Orleans area and what it has to offer, because you never know where you people might be. So, Leonard, that's your territory there, so I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you. Well, you know, my favorite place, and it's actually where I started, was the New Orleans Public Library. Actually, back in '78, I think I mentioned. But I actually served as microfilm equipment working for Eastman Kodak back in '75. So I've actually have been I guess a full-time, almost full-time employee there at one time because I serviced a lot of microfilm equipment. But what amazed me was that I didn't know until I actually got, I guess, access to a lot of the records that they had, because that library actually has 2 basements, and that's kind of unique in New Orleans, I know. And I was surprised that even with Katrina that they did not lose a lot of those records, but that's where all the original records are kept. There's a first and a second basement. And so I got a chance to explore down through the years a lot of the original records, and that's what fascinated me about, I guess, the old records and you know, the old newspapers. The collections are unreal that they have there. And so just to give you an idea what I found that they have, of course, index to all of the justice of the peace marriage records from 1846 to 1880. New Orleans newspaper marriage index from 1837 to 1857. They have the old New Orleans city directories, which is always great for genealogy research to kind of find out where your folks lived. And what's good about that also, if you're doing a documentary, you can kind of, like I say, go to Google Maps and actually pull that information up, and that old house may still be there. They have the passenger arrival at the Port of New Orleans, naturalization records in New Orleans. They have birth records of New Orleans. There's also a collection of newspapers from 1787 to 1974. And of course, they have the Times-Picayune, and you can also get a lot of the different courthouses on microfilm, their records as well. So you can actually spend weeks and weeks in New Orleans Public Library and never run out of time or anything to research, because there's so much of it. What's also nice about it, and for African American resource, there's actually an African American Resource Center that's on the 2nd floor that actually has a lot of the slavery and civil rights records, documents, and a lot of the old, I want to say old footage, and they actually have film and everything that you can actually view, Harlem Renaissance stuff. So it's just a fun place to visit. Now the hours are a little different these days, because at one time they would stay open till late, but you'd have to definitely check their website and see what the hours are. Tulane University is another resource that I use a lot of, the Louisiana Research Collection, and it's the oldest and largest and most comprehensive research center outside of, second largest to actually the Hill Memorial over at LSU. But what's nice about it, they actually have anything dealing with Louisiana research. They specialize in art, carnival. Of course, they have the whole history of carnival, the Civil War, environmental studies. They have a lot of Jewish studies as well. Medicine, politics, you name it, it's over at Tulane University. And they have another library, actually 2 other libraries. It's the Amistad Research Center that I make use of as well. And it actually covers a lot of civil rights era, a lot of personal records and documents that actually have been collected, not just for African Americans, but for Native Americans, Asian Americans, Latinos, and Jewish Americans, as well as Appalachian whites. So it's a very good location to actually do a lot of your research. And one of my favorite also is the Hogan Jazz Archives, that if you are into the jazz history of New Orleans and to find old recordings and photographs, and if you're doing documentaries, it's an excellent source. And they actually have a publication that they put out for years that's available there on site. And University of New Orleans, Earl K. Long Library. That's another good one for me because I've actually found a lot of good family research there. I've actually found photographs of my dad and my grandfather at a company that they worked in, that they worked for, actually, that actually had all of the archives sent to them. And there's a section for New Orleans public high schools, schools in New Orleans, that a good friend of mine, Al Kennedy, actually was part of putting that piece together. And it's the history of the public school system in New Orleans. So they have, old photographs from Forsyth High, Warren Easton, a lot of the older schools, Booker T. Washington. And so it's a great location to actually find a lot of New Orleans information. And that's my
Thanks.
3.
I know. We had to fight over who was talking about what, because all 3 of us have been to all of these repositories in New Orleans. And even in my case, my family is not from New Orleans, but these different ones have different things. The Historic New Orleans Collection is a two-part research. It's also has the Williamson Center. And so it's 2 different locations in the French Quarter. And again, one is the one on Charter Street is where you would go to actually do research, and that's the Williamson Center. So again, make an appointment to go there. Their scope is broad. All of these in different cities are going to focus primarily on that region. So they're going to have a lot of New Orleans material, but again, people will donate their manuscripts, or people might donate their art, and it may be that it's a family that's not in the New Orleans area. They may be letters that are not in New Orleans. Historic New Orleans Collection has a lot of stuff from Andrew Jackson, even after the War of 1812, which was in New Orleans. But one of the things they do have is they've got some good digital pieces over at the Historic New Orleans Collection, and artwork. On the photography, please follow their instructions, because I had a case where I went and they told me, well, I went thinking I could see it right away, and come to find out it needed 24 hours to unchill before I could look at something. So in that case, if I had paid more attention, I could have gone later. But that's a good place. The biggest drawback to that one is going to be, trying to park. But it's huge, and you really go online. That's your best place to find what they have available there. Make your appointment, go see what you want to see. Another one is the Notarial Archives for the city of New Orleans, and really, again, records from out of the state. And I could talk a whole half hour just on this one place that people don't know even exists. A notary is like a lawyer. The records there go back to 1735. They go all the way up to 1970 that are in it. They're located at the clerk of court's office. They're actually in a portion of what would be a governmental building, because they were like lawyers. They bind their books every year, every 2 years, even in the 1700s, and the notaries were responsible for archiving their own material. So you have these original records, and when you go in, that's what you're going to get. They're going to be in French or Spanish. The beauty of this is their online index. You can go and literally look at every I don't know how to say it, entry. They have over 40 million pages of records, according to their website. The problem with that may be that a notary acted in the old days just like it did for a lawyer. Nowadays, you would probably use 1 or 2 notaries, and that's it. So it's to find where your family is. And it's been years I've been going through the indexes, and I've now found 2 that my family from out of town came to them to handle the same kind of things lawyers do now, even emancipation of slaves. They have land records. They've got many, many. But to give you an idea, because I don't want to hog all the time here on all these repositories, they have, covering the span from 1835 to 1970, there are over 100 notaries. In each of them, they may have 1 volume. They can have up to 240 volumes. A volume covers 1 to 2 years. It's a lot of material to go through, but you can do it online. And please don't be intimidated. It's located on Poydras Street in the clerk of court's office. They do have some free parking, but it's in a skyrise. You have to go in, check in with the security guard, and then go up to the floor. The other thing that they have there that you might be interested in. And Leonard talked about finding globally on a satellite where your house was. They have the city maps that show the different surveying maps and plots of the French Quarter, and they will explain how the street numbers changed over time. So you can look in a city directory and you find your ancestor, but then again, that street address may not, the house may still be there, it's under a different number. That's where you go to find out how those street numbers changed. And last but not least, one of my favorite places to go is actually in Metairie, and it's the Jefferson Parish Library on West Napoleon. Within that is the American Italian Library. I get it wrong. It is one of the largest Italian libraries in the nation. People come from all over to research there. It used to be at the Renaissance Italian Museum, which is located in the CBD since the 1970s. But it was moved into 2012 is when they moved it over to the Jefferson Library. So if you come from Sicilian or Italian genealogy, this is a great resource for you at the public library there. And the good thing about that is they're open 7 days a week. I like libraries. Saint-Domingue, if your ancestors go back to what is now Haiti's, the Mormon Library in Metairie has film from some of the churches. They have an extensive collection of microfilm from the Latter-day Saints covering the Saint-Domingue refugees. So those are my favorite, and I don't know if we're out of time, but you can talk real
briefly, I like the Louisiana Historical Center at the Old Mint. That's where they have all the French and Spanish colonial court records.
And that's where she filmed Jim Parsons, my favorite little guy, when she was on Who Do You Think You Are? Was at the Mint. And unless you go there, you don't know that was.
You could see the Mint in that
but that's
scene,
a great,
yeah.
And that's probably one people don't know about that has a lot of great stuff. So we've covered this fast, but we really want you to get out there and look at these places. And so we'll take another little break, and we're going to come back and kind of wind up. We're going to branch out of New Orleans now, let you know other places in the state to go look for your people. Thanks.
Your contributions to the Bishop's Annual Appeal help support our own award-winning diocesan TV station, Catholic Life Television, that enables us to use this effective visual medium to proclaim the good news of God's love through the local community.
The fact that St. Vincent de Paul has a Beacons of Light television show, I'm a witness to tell you, before we were on Catholic Life TV, we were a much smaller organization. We weren't able to do what we can do today, and because of Catholic Life Television, we're doing so much more. And that's because people within the diocesan community invested. I thank all those who have either given or who are thinking about giving to the Bishop's Annual Appeal that supports this fine, outstanding diocesan ministry.
For more information, please call 225-336-8790 or visit baabr.org.
Join Catholic Life Television when we open up the Catholic Life Vault and re-air some of the special events that happened in our diocese. Watch as we share the journey of the many faith-filled people who make up the heart of this diocese.
Welcome back. We've been discussing some of our favorite places to go and find records, and we're trying to help you to broaden out and to kind of get a feel for where you can go and what you can do. When we were on break, Judy corrected me. When I was doing my part on the New Orleans, and I said the Williamson Center, it's the Williams Center. And she said I said it twice, which I could, and I actually know that family, so I should have gotten that right, but it's the Williams Center, and it's part of what we call the HNOC, when you research there, Historic New Orleans Collection. So I just wanted to make that little correction there. Now we're broadening out to the rest of the state, and Leonard and I are going to pretty much talk about some of the places in and around that we know have special collections, or that if your people are from there, you really should try to visit or look up the different areas. One of mine would be Northwestern University. Some of these are going to be universities. Our universities have fabulous special collections, is what they call it when they concentrate on something. The one at Northwestern actually has some stuff. It's got stuff from all over the state, but it specializes in the Cane River region. The Free People have called them the Cane River region. It also has a lot with art and literature. because of Cammie Henry, and that's what the library is named. It's the Cammie Henry Memorial Library. She lived at Melrose, and people like Lyle Saxton and a lot of your writers back in the early 30s wrote there. So that one's a good one. Alexandria Genealogical Library is another good source if you have people in the middle part of the state. Leonard, we're going to shift down to the southern part of the state. Where you like to go?
I like to go to actually Nichols State, which is the Eleanor Memorial Library, which Clifford Terrier is the archivist there. And I've actually found a lot of good resource information for my family tree because my paternal side is actually from the Lafourche area. And so I did find that my third great grandfather was a coroner during Reconstruction. So I was able to find actual documents. I actually got his, the voting records, the ballot sheets and everything, original copies that was actually in mint condition down in by Cliff.
There.
So.
Yeah, and one thing I want to add too from Nichols is that he's got some of the very earliest courthouse records. I'm a big courthouse person and library person, and that's pretty much what we're dealing with. But
That's
Cliff actually has some of the originals from the Lafourche Parish Courthouse,
Yes.
which was critical for me on some handwriting issues that I needed. But he also has fabulous photographs from the Martin collection on plantation homes and that are gone now. But it centers on Lafourche, Assumption, that whole general area of South Louisiana. Anything else on Nichols? Because the area courthouses throughout the state are a great place to research. And when you visit these courthouses, for instance, if you go to Morehouse Parish up in Bastrop, their libraries in these smaller parishes have amazing resources for the area. So if you're going to make a visit, you might want to go because people have written stories about their families there. Ouachita is another excellent one, the Ouachita Parish Library, along with their library. Some of these courthouses have archives in them. St. Landry Parish has a separate archives within their courthouse that is excellent. ULL University has the Center for Louisiana Studies, which specializes in all of the Acadian research. Great place to go if you're doing Acadian genealogy. So again, we've only scratched the surface, but we've given you some that we have visited or that we know are good that may have stuff for you in them. So all I can recommend is go to their websites or call them. Nichols doesn't have necessarily a catalog online, but again, get in touch with these people, make appointments when you visit them, except for the libraries and courthouses. And pretty much that sums it up, and we're going to close now. And we thank you for joining us on Roots of Faith Ancestry.